So this next video is on the cell membrane, and we're going to start off with the fluid mosaic model. When was it first outlined? 1972. Why is it the cell membrane is described as mosaics? Because the scattered pattern produced by the proteins within the phospholipid bilayer move about within it, although some may be in fixed positions. What are the four main components of phospholipids? Number 1, phospholipids. Number 2, cholesterol. Number 3, glycoproteins and glycolipids. And number 4, transport proteins. What do phospholipids form? They form the basic structure of the membrane, so the phospholipid bilayer. What do the phospholipid bilayers act as? They act as a barrier to most water-soluble substances. This ensures water-soluble molecules such as sugars, amino acids, and proteins cannot leak out of the cell, and unwanted water-soluble molecules can't get in. How can phospholipids be chemically modified to act as a signaling molecule? Phospholipids can be modified to act as signaling molecules by moving within the bilayer to activate other enzymes, or being hydrolyzed, which releases smaller water-soluble molecules that bind to specific receptors in the cytoplasm. Cholesterol. What is the function of cholesterol? It increases the fluidity of the membrane, stopping it from becoming too rigid at low temperatures, allowing cells to survive at lower temperatures. How does this occur? This occurs because cholesterol stops the phospholipid tails packing too closely together. What does interactions between cholesterol and the phospholipid result in? Interactions between cholesterol and phospholipid stabilizes the cell membrane at higher temperatures by stopping the membrane from becoming too fluid. What else does cholesterol affect in the membrane? Cholesterol increases the mechanical strength and stability of membranes. Without it, membranes would break down and the cells would burst. The next part is on glycolipids and glycoproteins. How can glycolipids and glycoproteins act as receptor molecules? Glycolipids and glycoproteins contain carbohydrate chains that exist on the surface, which enables them to act as receptor molecules. Signaling receptors for hormones and neurotransmitters. The receptors are involved in endocytosis, and some receptors are involved in cell adhesion and stabilization, as the carbohydrate part can form hydrogen bonds within water molecules. Some glycolipids and glycoproteins act as cell markers or antigens for cell-to-cell recognition. Transport proteins. What is the use of transport proteins, and name the different types? So, transport proteins create hydrophilic channels to allow ions and polar molecules to travel through the membrane. There are two types: the channel proteins and carrier proteins. Carrier proteins change shape to transport a substance across the membrane. What are the function of transport proteins? Each transport protein is specific to a particular ion or molecule. Transport proteins allow the cell to control which substances enter or leave. Diffusion. The definition. Diffusion is the net movement of particles, molecules or ions from an area of high concentration to an area of lower concentration. Energy required. Diffusion is a passive process, therefore no energy is required for it to happen. Particles can diffuse across cell membranes as long as they can move freely through the membrane. Facilitated diffusion. Karyoproteins process. These move large molecules across membranes down their concentration gradient. Different karyoproteins facilitate the diffusion of different molecules. So the karyoproteins process. So number one, first a large molecule attaches to a karyoprotein in the membrane. 2. The protein changes shape. 3. This releases the molecule on the opposite side of the membrane. Then you have channel proteins. These form pores in the membrane for charged particles to diffuse through, down their concentration gradient. Different channel proteins facilitate the diffusion of different charged particles. Bulk transport, also known as endocytosis. Bulk transport moves into cells. It's the process by which the cell surface membrane engulfs material, forming a small sac or endocytic vacuole. Phagocytosis. This is the bulk intake of solid material by a cell. Cells that specialize in this process are called phagocytes. The vacuoles formed are called phagocytic vacuoles. For example, engulfing of bacteria by phagocytic white blood cells. Pinocytosis. This is the bulk intake of liquids. If the vacuole or vesicle that is formed is extremely small, then the process is called micropinocytosis. Exocytosis. This is bulk transport out of the cell, the process by which the materials are removed from or transported out of cells. So, how are substances released? The substances to be released, for example, enzymes or hormones, are packaged into secretory vesicles formed from the Golgi body. These vesicles then travel to the cell surface membrane. Here they are fused with the cell membrane and releases their contents outside the cell. For example, secretion of digestive enzymes from pancreatic cells. Active transport, the definition. So, the movement of molecules and ions through a cell membrane from a region of lower concentration to a region of high concentration, using energy from respiration. It requires karyoproteins and it requires energy. The energy is required to make the karyoprotein change shape, allowing it to transfer the molecule or ions across the cell membrane. Where does the energy come from? The energy is provided by ATP produced during respiration. The functions of active transport. It is useful in the reabsorption of useful molecules and ions into the blood filtration into the kidney tubules, absorption of some products of digestion from the digestive tract, loading sugar from the photosynthesizing cells of leaves in the phloem tissue for transport around the plant, and loading inorganic ions from the soil into root hairs. Then you have gas exchange. So bulk transport into cells, that's endocytosis. Bulk transport out of cells, exocytosis. What is endocytosis? The process by which the cell surface membrane engulfs material, forming a small sac or endocytic vacuole. Phagocytosis, I've already done this part, and pinocytosis is bulk intake of liquids. Osmosis definition. So osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules from an area of low solute concentration to an area of high solute concentration. It requires energy in the form of ATP. And then osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential through a partially permeable membrane. I just need to double check the definition of osmosis because I've written two definitions there. So osmosis 134. No, it doesn't actually say. But I'm gonna go from high to low. So from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential. The rate of gas exchange by diffusion becomes more rapid as the surface area of the surface increases, the diffusion distance decreases, and the diffusion gradient becomes more steep.